Hi there, thanks for tuning in everyone. JD and Dart here with another video for you. Going to be something a bit different today. It's going to be a video about retro magazines. Not this type of retro magazine, which I'm going to do a video on shortly, but more the magazines that you can buy, actually the new magazines that you can buy today that are retro themed. So I'm going to be taking a look back at some of my favourites, which are small press magazines or commercially produced magazines from bigger publishers. Other sort of magazines in between that, A4 and A5 size. And while in another video, I'm going to have a look back at books which are produced by many of these similar sort of publishers. So hopefully we'll have a wide look at all the different types of magazines, and mainly my favourites, mainly UK based one. There's the odd one from elsewhere, but it's mainly UK based. But you'll get a good flavour of the mags that are out there, and hopefully bring a few together. And if you want to support them, which I think is important too, because a lot of this stuff's done people's spare time, and it's a real hobbyist feel to a lot of it, and a lot of passion that goes into these magazines. So I think it's important that we support them if we can. And also they're really fun to read, some of them, lots of stuff about games and computers and consoles. So I'll put some links up anyway so everyone can see where to go should they be interested in a particular magazine. So, without further ado, let's have a look. The first one we've got is called Fusion. Now, Fusion's been going a while now, and it's published by Fusion Retro Books, aka Chris Wilkins. I've written a few articles for Fusion. It's quite a fun little mag to write for, because not just does it just cover retro, but it covers new games as well, and it also covers things other than games as well, as we'll see. So, a little intro editor's note there from Chris, and then there's lots of these Fusion loves type things, and new game reviews. This new game review is by Simon Butler, obviously an industry veteran, and lots of nice articles, all glossy, well produced, lots of artwork to look at as well. There's a bit on antics here. They do a section where they look at a cover of an old magazine. Hardware features as well, which is nice. A series article there on Jetman. Another series article, a Heaven and Hell regular column by Alan Hamilton, who I think is quite involved in the production of the magazine as well, and lots of other little bits and other Fusion loves. So lots of really nice stuff. As I say, there is a few modern bits as well to get your teeth into if you wish to. Focus on an arcade cabinet there, 720 degrees, and a bit on toys as well. I'll flick past it, but there's regular sections on toys and old TV and so on. So a real variety here. This is one of my favourite sections, Fusion Fail. There's always slating a particular game. Here they've got Aliens, Colonial Marines, which obviously was a bit of a disaster a few years ago. And a section here called Fusion Gore, which is all about gory games, so that's quite interesting as well. So yeah, a really good magazine, Fusion. Really enjoy that, and you can subscribe to that. This is issue 7 from a few months ago, but it's up to issue 11 or 12 now, I believe. So lots of those back issues. They do annuals as well, which are really nice, and special issues on particular computers or consoles. They've done one on the Amiga, the Spectrum, and the Commodore 64, and the Amstrad CPC, I believe. So there you go, that's a good start. It's Fusion, nice A5 magazine. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I'm a solid Spectrum fan, but I'm also a big fan of this magazine, 364, which, as the name suggests, is based on the Commodore 64 computer, which was the Specky's great rival back in the 80s. 364 is produced by a guy called Vinny Manolfi. Sorry if I've got your name wrong, Vinny, but that's the guy anyway. And it's really good, very well written, very professional looking magazine that features lots of interviews with Commodore 64 coders of yore and newer coders as well. As you can see, you've got Stuart Collier on the cover here. Lots of features on games that didn't get released, all sorts of stories, anything based on the Commodore 64 that can be related to that, of course. So some really nice features to read. Diary of a Game there, as you can see. There's a column by Julian Rignall, who used to write for Zap back in the day, which is really good. It's always nice to read his thoughts on various games and the scene today. And there's even some pokes as well, which really harks back to the magazines of old when you type in all these listings to try and help you with games. That one's for screen skipping, and I think there's another one at the back, yeah, which is for helping you cheat in games. So lots to read and lots to discover in Freeze 64, which has also been going a while. Yet we're on issue 36 there, so Vinny's produced lots of these and it's still going strong and it's really popular. So you can subscribe to Freeze 64. I think he does subscription exclusive issues and support Freeze 64, which is a really, really good mag. I really enjoy it a lot, despite the fact I was a Specky fan back in the day. More 8-bit with 8-bit magazine, which is produced by another chap called John Cavanagh. As you can see, this issue focuses on the VIC-20, which I think is a bit of a underappreciated computer. It kind of unfortunately came out just before the behemoth that was the Commodore 64, so it kind of got forgotten about a bit. But this is a nice little collector's guide to the VIC-20, so if you're interested in collecting for the VIC-20, then this is a good magazine to pick up. This is a feature on sports games, written by George Batchelor, I think, a contributor. And again, there's a wide variety, obviously all related to the 8-bit computers of the time. And this one is the one that you might assume interested me the most. It's a feature on Sir Clive Sinclair and Sinclair, because those of you who might not know that Sinclair produced a lot of things other than the ZX Spectrum, including this calculator here. And this rather small TV here. One of my friends back in the day had one of these, and watching black and white TV on a tiny screen like that was rather painful, but it felt very futuristic at the time. So there you go, there's 8-bit magazine, lots of nice 8-bit related features there, and a review of Shockwave Rider on the CPC. So if you're a fan of any of the 8-bit computers, this is definitely a magazine to get into. From the same publisher is this sister publication, which was kick-started earlier this year, or sorry, last year, called Retro Format. As the name suggests, it's not just about retro games, it's about retro TV and classic cinema as well. This is mainly a magazine focusing on homebrew, so it's not quite there for the nostalgic hit that the other ones are there for, but it's very interesting to read all the reviews of modern games that are made on old hardware. So if you look back in this one, you've got a feature on the Dreamcast by, I think that's by John Cavanagh himself, obviously a favourite console of his. And then as you move into the magazine, there's a little news section on games that are incoming, which is always interesting. And then you get lots of reviews such as this of new games on old formats. I think this is an Amiga game called Worthy. So yeah, looks a nice little maze game, that. So lots to read about there. And then, as I said, at the back, it's not just games. There's a couple of interesting sections. You've got an article there, Classic Cinema, on Superman movies, which I really enjoyed reading. And also I think there's an article on the Twilight Zone as well, which I loved when I was a kid, although it did used to have me hiding behind the sofa sometimes. So that's Retro Format. Really good little magazine. That's A4, that one, rather than A5, the other ones. We're going a little bit niche now. A niche within a niche, if you like, with Sam Revival. Now, as you can see, this is another A5 magazine with a nice little disc on the front, so that's like a nod to the magazines of yours when you used to get a cover-mounted disc. The Sam, produced by MGT, was a bit of a failure back in the 80s. It was a pretty decent computer. I remember seeing the screenshots and everything. It looked quite nice, but for one reason or the other, it was a commercial failure. Which is a bit of a shame, but I really enjoyed reading about the Sam, because obviously a lot of people don't know about it. And this magazine, produced by a chap called Colin Piggott, i.e. Quasar, is a really good look back at the Sam, interviews with coders, letters pages, technical details, games that weren't released. There's some nice development artwork in there as well. So if you want to find out more about the Sam computer, then this is the place definitely to start. So far, Colin has produced 25 issues from a few years ago, but he is about to reboot the magazine, hence why I've included it here. So hopefully we'll see some new issues soon. So it's Sam Revival. Another niche within a niche, we've got the Classic Adventurer. Now, the Classic Adventurer is produced by Mark Hardesty, who some of you will know as the man behind A Gremlin in the Works, which was a lovely book, which I'll be highlighting in my book video about Gremlin Graphics, or just Gremlin as they were latterly, the Sheffield-based games company from the 80s and 90s. And this Mark's also a big fan of classic adventure games, so he produces this in his spare time. The Classic Adventurer. I think it's free if you have the PDF, but I prefer to have the print version, so I ordered a few from Mark, and yeah, I really like it. Lovely cover there, which I think is The Mystery of Arkham Manor, which I remember playing on my Spectrum a few years ago. And of course, it's mainly interviews. There's a little intro by Mark there, interviews with coders or people that wrote these games back in the day. And it doesn't necessarily just that's about the Mastertronic game, I think, Z, by the look of it, Z. It isn't just about 8-bit games, it's also about 16-bit games as well. And obviously, if you're a fan of adventure games, this will be absolute gold for you. You'll love reading about all these old games, seeing all these old screenshots, and so on. I must admit, I had a bit of a love-hate relationship with typing adventure games. I always used to wonder what I was supposed to do next, and found some of them quite impenetrable. There was one called The Sorcerer of Claymore Castle by Adventure International, which was particularly hard. I remember seeing a solution for it and thinking I never would have got that in a million years. But if you're a fan of the genre, as I say, there's lots to get your teeth into here. Lots of nice articles by fans, and also, as I say, from people that wrote these games back in the day. So really nice stuff there by Mark. Lots of issues of the Classic Adventure available. Next, we moved to Poland, and this is a magazine called Commodore and Amiga Plus, which I assume means Commodore and Amiga Plus. As the name suggests, it's about the Commodore computers, mainly the Amiga, and it's a very glossy A4 magazine that harks from Poland, written by a variety of people, and it's a very nice, professionally produced magazine, like all of these are, to be honest. Yep, lots on the Commodore, lots on the Amiga, as you would expect. News sections, game reviews, again, it's a mixture of artwork, as you can see there, reviews of new games on this old hardware, and also look-backs at old games companies, all sorts of things. There's a bit about coding here on the VIC-20. So lots of variety here, lots of hardware, lots of games for you to get your teeth into. Really lots of nice stuff, translated obviously from Polish into English. So there's the odd glitch with the translations, but generally it's all done very professionally. Very nice magazine, very text heavy. So if you've got a bit of a headache, it might not be the best thing to read. But there's plenty to explore here and to learn about the Amiga and the other Commodore computers. So there you go. It's Commodore and Amiga Plus. For my last two magazines, I'm going to move on to the magazines that are a little bit more commercial. And when I say that, I don't mean to demean the others, but just that they're produced by larger companies. And first up, we've got Wireframe. Now, Wireframe's been going for a few years now, I think 2 or 3 years. This is issue 35, yeah. And I really love this magazine. Again, it's a good mix of different things. It's produced by, Raspberry Pi Publishing. So there's a lot of focus on the Raspberry Pi and how to code on it, and coding in general, which is nice to see. But it was also a lot of focus on games and also retro games as well. So there's columns by various industry people, such as, who have we got here? Keezer MacDonald, who's the games editor, I think, for The Guardian Online. And you get lots of news and stuff, as a regular monthly magazine it is now. You get lots of news. I think it originally came out twice a month. It's just made a lot of hard work. Very glossy, well produced, very well written as well. Lots of different articles, lots of different features on coming up games that have a foot in retro as well. This toolbox section, as I said, that's the bit about all the coding and everything, and how to make games on the Pi in particular, I think, which is good fun, and a great help if you've got one of those little computers. This is an interesting article about the very, very, very start of gaming. So that's lots of historical information like that, which is obviously great if you're a student of gaming, such as me. And yeah, just loads of stuff. And then at the back you get reviews. There's an article on Tecmo there. You get loads of reviews of old games, new games on old systems as well, plus also new indie type games. There's a strong support for indie games here. You won't see many AAA games reviewed in this magazine. They do slip in the odd AAA review, but mostly it's supporting all those indie games out there. So there you go. That's Wireframe. Great little magazine. That only £3 as well, monthly now. And finally, we have the big boy, Retro Gamer. This is the latest issue from this month, which is June 2020. And as you can see, strong focus, even when it's backwards, strong focus, not on 08, but on 80s. Back to the 80s we're going for this issue. It's a great magazine. I love Retro Gamer. A few years ago when I decided to start writing, someone said you should write about what you love. And I love video games, so I thought that'd be a good start. And I loved old video games, so I thought Retro Gamer would be the place to start. And I shot off an email to the editor, Darren Jones, at the time. This is over 10 years ago now, and he replied and was very positive. And here I am now, 10 years later. I'm still writing for Retro Gamer, and I must admit, I still love the magazine. I still read every issue from cover to cover, all the articles, regulars, and everything. So let's have a look. We've got the Retrobates, which is, oh look, there's me down there. There you go. We do this every month. We have these little pictures, and Darren asks a question that is related to the magazine's content. So this one's about obviously your 80s memories, and then the answers are printed there along with what you're currently playing. So you've got a contents page, it's really nice. Lots of screenshots. And then there's a load of regulars, like there's the radar, which tells you all what's incoming, retro themes, obviously with all of that. These nice 2-page spreads of games, which I always like. And then the main feature, which is this Back to the 80s, which is a really nice, fond look back at all the games that we played back in the day, along with interviews of various people that were involved back in the day with games back then. Lots of different little highlights, Retro Revival I think these are called, yeah, which are written by the team and highlight particular favourites, games of theirs. This is my feature in this issue, Formula 1. Now, the makings of, which is what this is, are very popular, and they're kind of the backbone of the magazine. And I think the fact that Formula 1, which was a great game for the Spectrum and Amstrad, the fact that it can still feature in a magazine like this is great, and I think it's kudos to Darren that he's willing to explore games that are even a bit lesser known and include them in the magazine. And it was a really lovely story reading about Formula 1, because it was basically coded by two guys in their 30s and even 40s they were by the time they finished their game writing career, which in the 80s was a bit rare. It was a lovely story, and unfortunately one of the guys behind it, George Munday, he died a few years ago, but Peter Wheelhouse, the other coder, was really fun to talk to about his experiences writing Formula 1 for the ZX Spectrum. So there's lots of hardware stuff as well. They acknowledge obviously that hardware is very popular. Outrunners, which is an ultimate guide on this arcade machine, written by Martin Carroll, who used to edit the magazine back in its very early days when it was being published by a company called Live. If you don't know, Live went bust a few issues into Retro Gamer, the original Retro Gamer, and it was bought by Imagine Retro Gamer amongst other Live titles, I think. And then Imagine themselves were bought out by Future Publishing, who publishes Retro Gamer today. These are always nice, the archives features. I did quite a few of those when I first started writing for the magazine. This is on Ocean, France. So lots of really nice features, regulars, in-depth knowledge, written by a lot of people, freelancers such as myself, who really know not a lot about their games, a lot about their games. And always very well presented. The design constantly impresses me. I'm always looking forward to seeing what they've done with my latest article, because it always looks good, and the guys behind it always know how to make the mag look really good. So there you go. There's lots more, and at the back you always get a few reviews and stuff as well of retro themed stuff, of, new retro themed games. So there you go. There's Retro Gamer, the biggest and best retro magazine out there. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to post this video soon, and then after that I'll do the book one as well, highlighting a few books as well that you can look into to get your retro fix. Thanks for watching, and I'll post another video soon. Cheers. Bye.